It's March 1898. Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson has just arrived in Kenya on a train from the port of Mombasa. Patterson's been dispatched to this location by the Foreign Office of the Uganda Railway. His orders are to oversee the construction of a bridge across the Tsavo River. This is something that Patterson has looked forward to his entire life. He's always wanted to visit Africa. He revels in the beauty of the African landscape, an extensive expanse of wilderness covered by low stunted trees and a jungle of thick undergrowth and thorns. The snow-capped peak of Mount Kilimanjaro, a breathtaking backdrop for a beautiful scene. Not far from the main camp, comprised of more than 3,000 workmen, Patterson pitches tent and settles into his new surroundings. Within days of his arrival, he receives all the necessary men and supplies, and he begins work on the bridge straight away. As the sun set over the savannah one night on his third week in country, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson settled into his quarters for the evening. He had no idea that this night was different than all the others. This night would change everything, and would mark the beginning of one of the most incredible accounts of man versus beast that the world has ever known. As darkness fell over the Tsavo, the workmen hunkered down for the night. The full moon dimly lit the usually pitch-dark landscape, and so many camps allowed their campfires to burn out this night. In a tent on the edge of the main work camp, Ungan Singh, one of Patterson's foremen, lay asleep among his bunkmates. It was a pleasantly mild evening, and so the men decided to sleep with their tent door open. The notion that this could be potentially dangerous had never entered any of their minds. But just after midnight, an intruder stalked the tall grass just outside the tent under the cover of darkness. With no campfire burning, it easily made its way across camp to the open tent flap. With the workmen fast asleep, it poked its head in through the open door and grabbed Ungan Singh around the neck. He managed to let out a blood-curdling scream, alerting his bunkmates, before the beast ripped him from the tent and made off with his body into the tall grass. The other men lay frozen in terror as they listened to the sound of their friend being devoured, just yards from their camp. The next morning, Lieutenant Colonel Patterson is alerted to the night's events. He wastes no time in grabbing his 303 and making off into the bush to track his lost foreman. Upon investigating the campsite, it becomes quickly evident that the man must have been carried off by a lion. The sand outside the tent was littered with pug marks, and it was easy to follow the lion's trail, as it must have stopped several times, leaving large pools of blood all along the route, and painting a long crimson line through the tall grass. Then in the distance, Patterson sees a telltale sign. A flock of vultures take flight from a lonely tree, alerting to the presence of his lost foreman's remains. Scattered beneath the tree were bits of flesh and bone. Separate from the remains, Singh's head lay still intact, his eyes wide, a gnarled expression of horror on his face. Patterson would later write an account of the incident, describing the grisly scene as the most gruesome sight he'd ever seen. Upon closer examination, it was determined that not one, but 2 lions had done the deed. It was later found out that several other workers had disappeared from the camp in the previous days, but Ungan Singh would become the first officially recognized victim of the 2 lions that would become known as the Tsavo Man-Eaters. The ghost and the darkness